If you're young and you're just starting out with carding, you shouldn't try to get millions even if you have an opportunity. That's my opinion. Yeah, I can even reveal my Instagram for free. Yeah, and then you'll get charged for incitement to criminal activities. Yeah, how could I forget that? I guess I'll just leave my Telegram then. As they say, no matter how much you feed the wolf, he still uses the darknet. Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new People Pro video. We have a new special guest today in our studio who's wearing a mask for some reason. And today we're going to talk about bank Trojans for Android phones, SKIMMERS, those things which are way more advanced than skimmers, and let you steal your bank card data including your PIN code through the ATM. We'll also talk about prohibited VoIP telephony and about PayPal system, which is quite easy to steal from, and about carding in general. So let's get to it right away. Why did you come to visit us? I didn't look for you. You actually found us yourself. Yeah, we didn't officially meet, but I know you at least for 3 years. I have read your book and now finally get to meet you in person. So to make our meeting more productive, I agreed to have an interview. To tell you the truth, I was about to change my mind twice. I was not sure if I should do it. But anyway, I need to warn young guys out there about all of this, and that's also one of the reasons I'm here. And I'll tell you more about this as we move on with our talk. So I first encountered the dark web 7 years ago when I first started doing money laundering. Actually, I didn't really start anything. Some folks just asked me to help them out with bank cards, and that time I didn't really know how it worked because I was too young. So I registered cards on my friends and people that I knew, and then I started running out of them and I had to look for some other people. So I just Googled how to buy a bank card and some website came up. I'm not going to say the name for obvious reasons. So I started to get those cards from there. I started working and stuff, and later I found an ad about the cash out with a large percentage. This income seemed more attractive to me than what I was paid off, so I wrote to this man, and that's how it all began. He deposited about $130 on Russian bank cards. In rubles, right? Yeah, and I'll explain why it was exactly $130 and why it happened that way. So I started to work with him, and he was giving me about 30 to 40% from every transaction. In one day, usually we transferred about $1,600 to $2,500. Those were the early 2000s, and $1 cost 33 rubles, which was quite a decent sum of money for a young kid. And after some time, I got interested where those money came from, and only later I found out that it was the money stolen with a Trojan. And so since I made deposits through third parties, that is people that I knew personally from the beginning, it became my huge mistake that backfired in the future. Honestly, at that time, I didn't even know that I could have left a trail that would influence my life later. So then I purchased this program from this guy, but I didn't really know how to use it. I didn't know where to get traffic from, but later I learned everything. I learned how to use an Android bot, which is basically a regular virus that gets into the phone through messages or social networks. For example, a message comes to the phone, look, here are your naked pictures, and the victim follows the link because they are shocked, and in the meantime, somebody is infecting their phone. But this works only with Android, so after infection, the phone gets to our admin panel with 90% of its functions. And we send a text message with the word transfer to the bank account number and the amount up to $130. When I just started this, banks didn't even know about it yet. I mean, they knew, but they didn't know how to deal with it because you cannot turn off the entire mobile bank service, and at that time, they didn't start to solve it yet. It was 2010 or 13 maybe. We were making a lot of money on this, and then in 2015 or 16, one of my friends was called by security services for a conversation, and at that time we didn't know how it would all turn out, of course. So he talked with them, and they started asking about me, like who I was, and then they also invited my girlfriend. And I realized that shit is about to hit the fan, so I collected all the money that I had and moved to a warm country. And what did the security agents ask your friend and your girlfriend? Like who I was and where that money came from. Basically, this all happened due to the fact that I first transferred money to third parties who I knew in person, so they questioned them first and only after that contacted me. They said that one of my acquaintances led to me. And not to lose me, they began interrogating and collecting case materials and information about me from people who knew me, so I thought finally they would invite me, and I have no idea what would happen, so I decided not to wait for it, and I left. And what about your girlfriend? If they invited her, they could have had you arrested by that moment, not to let you get away? Well, I'm just telling the story as it is, and she was actually not my girlfriend, more like a friend, and when they invited her for a conversation, she denied knowing me at first, but then they showed her screenshots of our texts that we had sex, so they proved that I am connected to her in some way. The sex way. Yeah, first she denied it, but they were asking questions where that money came from, those cars, and so on. It was obvious that things were getting tough, so I didn't want to risk it and immediately moved to one of the warm countries. I lived there for 4 years, maybe 5, give or take. So what was next? Luxury cars, an apartment in the very center of Moscow? No, later on I started to quit this laundering business already. We started to try karting. Well, I haven't had much experience yet. I only worked with Android bots before, so I was learning some moves here and there, and the money was running out because 4 years had passed. That time we had too many parties and spent too much money, which I often regret a lot. Even for those times, it was a lot of money. And I had to come up with some new idea. I couldn't go back to Russia because it was very dangerous, so I moved back to one of the nearest countries to work with IP telephony. I was invited there by a guy I knew. I have never dealt with that before, but my friend said you can put gateways, such equipment from 4 to several channels. You put SIM cards and you steal traffic. I didn't know all the technical details, but my job was to check the admin panel and control the process. And to install the equipment in the apartments, and we were paid like 15 cents for a minute of hijacked traffic. Let me explain here a little how it works for the audience. So basically, you buy some local SIM cards in different countries, you put them in a special gateway, and you get to use the power of this provider, even the top one, but mostly like bypassing them. Yeah, bypassing them, exactly. Well, this is a clear violation of law of any country, no matter where you are. It means you can't do it. Actually, we didn't work too long on that project. I made one mistake. So the point was that I had an acquaintance and he needed some money, so I decided to help him out. I showed him the system of working with these gateways, and frankly speaking, he was not very smart. I just told him, like, here is a car, here is the equipment, drive from point A to point B, do not stop anywhere. If you stop, be careful not to get caught, because it's easier for the provider to track you when you stop. Right, so the first week we did a great job. I had already packed my stuff and I was going to leave, and then it turned out that he got caught. They punched him a couple of times in those countries where we worked. It was completely okay. Well, in Russia too, to be honest. So they talked to him and he said he just pushed 2 to 3 buttons, he knows nothing, and they started asking who is the main guy. So eventually the bad guy starts talking, and I didn't know about it. He didn't tell me anything. I just packed my bags and I was going to fly to another country to work on these businesses. And back in those times, we worked with viruses. It's when you infect an ATM machine with a virus and it spits out money when you enter the key code. But that's another topic. Anyway, it was evening. I came back home. I was living in a super elite house with a concierge, and I remember it was just like now. I was walking up to the front desk at home and see that a security guard looked at me not as usual, as if he wants to say something to me. And I look to my right and I get jumped by local security service. So they packed me, we went up to my apartment, they came with a warrant, but I never keep any equipment at home, even now, just some small things maybe. So they went inside the house, they see that bags are packed, and they were glad that they were in time, because the next day I was going to fly. And funnily enough, my friend came over who didn't know about my business, and he'd seen that he came home and there are people in masks. He was shocked, he had no idea what was going on, and he came for a completely different reason. So they started frisking the house. All the baseboards were pulled out. They were doing it in a very dirty way. They didn't really find anything at the house, though, and they came specially for gateways. So they handcuffed me to the radiator and started beating me and threatening me with a gun. But actually, it didn't really help them. I remember like now, then one huge guy came up to me and took out some drugs out of his jacket pocket. You remember such things for quite a long time. I'm not sure what kind of drugs they were or if those were actually drugs, because in those countries, planting a drug is like a piece of cake. There has been a case like that in Russia just recently. I agree, but still. So he takes something out and says either you speak or we're gonna find this in your house and you're gonna get locked 100%, or you're gonna give us a self-incrimination, tell us where your objects are located, and so on. And so I'm already beaten up. For like 7 hours, I've been fucking beaten like a dog. I probably still have the scars from the cuffs, so I realize that I'm about to get into trouble. What if they can do it for real? By the way, they had a really messed up system of pressing. First, witnesses come in. So just because I don't want to get beaten, I say that I will sign anything. They pull the witnesses and I say I won't sign it, and they ask the witnesses to leave and keep beating me. And the witnesses outside the door are just standing and listening to me getting punched. I scream and shout so that maybe the neighbors could hear me. And when the neighbors came over, they just showed them their IDs and locked the doors because, they don't care because it's state security service and there's no one higher than them. So when they pulled out the drugs, I realized there was no point in denying. So I partly admitted the guilt, and it's basically self-incrimination, but I didn't reveal any locations. I said we did it before, but we moved all the equipment to a different country. They didn't believe me, so they started beating me again and again, and at some point they even looked at the time and they thought it was too long that they had been doing it, so like they got stuff to do. And they also took my phone and forced me to tell them the password in the same manner. They looked through my messengers and they attached whatever there was to the case materials with a bunch of stamps. And so after those so-called police officers left the apartment to save myself and leave the country, I basically had to prove that all of my testimonials were forced. I mean, they were forced and I said too much, but I was clean. Mostly because they didn't find anything in my house that had any relation to international mobile service. So after that, I wrote to the embassy and explained what happened, so I could somehow leave the country through the green corridor maybe, so they invited me for a conversation, and I came over. And did they hit you hard? What about your face? Well, they didn't hit me in the face, but mostly in the chest, in the head. I still have some scars, but they had no fear of leaving any marks on my body. They didn't really care. And that's basically why I admitted the guilt, because, I saw them beating me up. They didn't have any fear, and they were not scared of anything, so I thought it was easy for them to even plant drugs. So guys, you see, you all opt for cyber safety, for using crypto, encrypted hard drives, and how I wrote in my book, 2 kidney punches, open any password, and here's a guy confirming that. Exactly. And they didn't really hit him too hard, they just threatened to plant some drugs on him, and that's when you realize how bad it may turn out. Actually, I was always ready for some kind of takeover. You always played in your head, but when it suddenly happens and the cops also know how to work with people, how to scare people, if I were still in Russia at least, I could solve this problem, but when you are in a different country, everything is completely different. Like, you don't know the rules, you don't know the law, you think you might be killed at any moment, and it was a country where corruption was very strong, so this was quite normal there. That would not have been an exception. Some guys that I worked with told me that they can even break your knee, and I didn't want to become disabled just because of some 30 to 40,000 fucking dollars. Anyway, so they described all the property that they could describe. I went to the embassy, first called there and talked to the consul. They didn't let me in for some reason. I didn't really understand why, because, I came there with an emergency. So they said that they are gonna try to do something, but they cannot promise anything. So the same day, I took a train. I first called my friend, gave him a certain sum of money, so that later on they can help me to cross the border. You mean the border to Russia? To Russia, yes. Although I couldn't go to Russia, but I had nowhere to go. That moment I was actually very broken, because you cannot go to Russia because 5 years ago you did some wrong business there, but you cannot stay here as well, and you don't know what to do. It just breaks you. But still, it was the easiest way to go to Russia. At least there was no case file on me there, and I wasn't interrogated there, so if I got caught, I would immediately call a lawyer. Also, at least I know the language properly, Russian that is. So I took this train, I paid a big sum of money, around 80% of what we have earned, and we earned a lot even though we worked for like 2 to 3 months. And how much money did you make per month? I know one guy, he works in Ukraine, in Germany, Poland, and Belarusian border because Belarusian traffic is very expensive, and he said they make around $30,000 per month. Yeah, on one hand, you can make different sums. It all depends on how much equipment you have. I can't tell you how much equipment I had for obvious reasons, but the damage was fully counted like $40,000. It was about 60 something in their currency. Is that in a month? That's 1.5 months of work. Actually, it was much more. I don't know how they counted, who they were interrogating, maybe the guy I was working with, but in total they calculated this amount. Also, there was one episode I got on the train and there is a checkpoint at the border. And so I will never forget the moment when you arrive at the border and you're like all shaken that they won't let you out or they might catch you when you get in. Now I'm talking about it with a smile, but back then, by the way, I was with a guy who came to me and he was still shocked. And that's how we were on the way, both shocked in this fucking train. We didn't know what's going to happen. It's either here or there. We might not have a way out, but to my surprise, I entered Russia quite easily. Maybe because it was by train, I don't know. So finally, I managed to get to Russia. I came to a city where I had a friend. It took me about a month to come to my senses and lick my wounds, and then I moved back to the country where I have lived for the last 4 to 5 years. So I came back to this country and started karting. I got really deeply involved in this business. But before I tell you about karting, we can talk about these things. I will tell you some basics, I won't go into detail where I got it from and stuff like that. I'll just tell you what's on the table. So we had a video 10 ways to steal a PIN code. Then I was at a banking conference in Belarus and we constantly discussed skimmers that are installed on ATMs and steal dumps of bank cards, like what is written on the magnetic strip, and also overlay keyboards and even more often video cameras that steal the PIN code. But in general, a skimmer is quite a huge thing and it's put on the card receiver and you can tell that it's there even if it's painted with the same color like the ATM body. Yeah, you can even detach it if you want to. Yeah, and it can be moved and you see that it's not an original part. But at the same time, I told you that there are also shimmers. A shimmer is an extra thin circuit board that go right to the insides of the ATM and you won't see them. And as far as I understand, these are components for shimmers. Can you tell us about them step by step? Yeah, let me tell you about these. So, a shimmer consists of 4 elements. I haven't got the 4th one here because it's not so important, but anyway, that's the kind of a plastic board that it's attached to the chip that reads card data, magnetic strip, that is. So this thing goes together with a chip that reads 2 stripes from the card. And then the finished chipboard is attached here on such a thing, plate like a carrier, and you can attach it with glue or anything. You apply it, stick it into the card receiver, and then you quickly pull this thing out. And this thing stays inside. So next, with this blade, which is stronger, you stick it in there, fix the top part, and pull it out. Okay, and after that, what finally stays inside the ATM? Only this little thing, and later with the same thing you just pull it back out. The thing is that banks can't really fight with shimmers because they're inside and you can't see them even if you want to. For example, in comparison, skimmers can trigger an alarm when you hang any object on the card receiver, and there's such a light that blinks, and it blinks for a reason. When my guys used to work with skimmers, they would first hang a nail on the card receiver. So they first hang a nail there and then leave for like 10 minutes, and if the security team does not arrive, then the alarm on the skimmer is disabled, and if it arrives, then it's clear you don't work with that ATM. And in case of shimmers, however, no security services will help. Even if the collectors arrive, they won't see it. It's much safer, and the PIN code can be obtained with standard devices like cameras or PIN pads. Depends on what you use, and that's what's interesting about shimmers. And do those things fit a specific ATM model? Yeah, they're made for a specific ATM with which they can work. So, about karting, I'll tell you something right away. I know there are guys who teach karting and stuff like that. Yeah, I had a guest like that in my studio. Yeah, I might have watched this interview even. So that's all bullshit for one simple reason. If the person is teaching karting, he cannot recruit an uncertain number of people. Simply because if you teach the basics how to work in that field, you need to explain to the newbie where to get their first material from. The material is the biggest problem now. Yeah, and secondly, the bins. For example, I don't work with Russia, I repeat again, I only work towards like USA, Europe, and other countries. And if you want to teach someone or want to work yourself, you first need to build a base. And in order to gather a base of bins, which are cards, you need to spend like $7,000 to $8,000, no matter what you work with, flights, clothes, or anything else, or you just transfer to Bitcoin. And what was always interesting for me about the people who teach, so, okay, you've taught a student how to do it, how to work with this system, for instance. Like with brand clothing items? Yeah, and so what? Where can this guy get the material? You didn't give him any bins because you need them yourself if you have them, so I don't really understand how they teach him what they teach. Like you didn't provide him with the material because you don't have enough because there's a shortage. Yeah, exactly. And if I taught someone, I would teach 5 to 10 people max to give them my bins. You have to understand, if you got 50 people, the bins will burn and you won't be able to work yourself. And that by itself basically contradicts karting in general. So I have been doing a lot of things in karting, flights, tickets, hotels, but recently we work mostly with PayPal. Like you get access to a bank account, grab full client's data from it, register a PayPal account. And what if the target already has a PayPal account? Well, you can't do anything about it. You can only create a new account with the same data and attach the bank account to it. That's not a big deal. So you open a new account, do a refund for a certain sum. Australia, for instance, lets you set up to 3,000 Australian dollars, which is around 2,000 USD. Generally, we do it the classic way, so you set up a sum up to $900. When you have attached a bank account to PayPal, then you do a send of $900 and you do it through a workaround. You can't just do it with a fresh email. And so you have to like Google some charity organization, for example, that accepts PayPal, get their email and send them up to $900 from your PayPal account. Like to unfreeze this account to make it work? Yes, to start doing moves with it. Then you do a refund after, say, 5 days. The money comes to your account, but that doesn't say that you will get them just like that. You need to find a good cashing out operator with working PayPals. If you transfer money to a new account, there's a chance that it will get limited. Like it will get blocked? Yeah, and so then you withdraw. The cashing out operator gets 50 to 60% of the deal. They take a lot because PayPal is still not just simple money laundering with bank cards. With PayPal, it's a little more complicated, and that's why such a large percentage. So basically, you're paying 50 to 60% for cashing out. I would say we get 50 to 60%. And the money laundering guy gets 40 to 50%, correct? Yeah. From one bank account, no matter how many millions of dollars there are, you can get up to 2,000 to 3,000 in a best case scenario. Because first of all, the cardholder will find out, and secondly, PayPal won't let a new account to withdraw money again and again. Even if the victim doesn't find out, if PayPal notices, they will block it. So you take out $3,000, wait for 2 to 3 days if the cardholder is inactive. The thing is that all people save money for their own needs, and some of them don't even check their account too often. So then you create a new PayPal account using the same data and withdraw. In my case, I withdrew a maximum of $6,000, and my friend at the time withdrew $10,000. All those talks about withdrawing like 50 to 60 grand may have happened earlier when PayPal fraud was not like now at all. I know some guys used to withdraw 50 to 60 grand, but it was a long time ago, as well as karting. Before, there was no protection, but now the world of karting is way more complicated. But there's still a lot of work. If your head works well, then you can always find any solution for yourself. Aside from the case that I mentioned before, I haven't been locked or had any case files on me over the course of my entire life. I mean, sometimes I was close, I was a step away from it, but luck was always on my side. But I understand that this day will come, and for it not to come, I'm using any resources possible to work legally, while I'm doing some savings and I'm trying to get away from this business completely. And obviously, I'll be honest, the temptation is pretty huge sometimes. I mean, when you're working legally and you're earning about $3,000 per month, and at the back of your head, it's like drugs, there's always a thought deep inside of you that you could be getting more, much more. And it's really hard to resist, and that's why I'll be honest, sometimes I still do it. But only those things that I can't get in jail for long, not like these things or something. I don't do this personally. So at least the penalty won't be like high, something like PayPal or something else that won't get me into big trouble in Russia. Personally, I don't have any temptation. I did a 10-year sentence. The first time I had 2.5 years of jail, I got out, but I was already doing some legal business, but also a little bit of illegal, so basically I went back to it. And then after release, I had some time for legal business, but the problem with it is that for a few years it just pulls money out of you, even until the moment when it gets to self-sufficiency at least. I had some savings when I got out of jail, but still there were times when I had nothing to eat for a couple of days, like really. But I didn't get back to the old activities. I had some old friends who had my back, not asking anything in return. Like the universe still sends you some help. And so basically for me, the temptation is gone completely because I live perfectly now. I used to spend $3,000 to $5,000 per month and I still do it now. Okay, maybe I had a car for 100,000 and now I don't have it, but that's not a big problem. But I am calm. It's better to have 5,000 not worrying about anything. It's 5 now, it will be 10 tomorrow, and in a year it will be 100. So basically the same level I was while I was doing karting. But I know that I can sleep well knowing that I'm not gonna get in jail and my mom won't have to carry parcels to jail for me. I completely agree, and if someone is on this path right now, I gotta warn them that I personally made many mistakes. When I had big money, I spent it a lot. I used to spend it like crazy. I spent it where I shouldn't have, like from drugs to clubs. Actually, my acquaintances did not have so much money, so every time we went out, I didn't even ask them for money. I didn't feel comfortable to ask money from them. I mean, I knew that they were barely surviving in the country where I've lived for a long time. Some of them were in the moving business and so on, and I never cared for money. But now I realize that if I learned to save, I would have quit that bad business by now and be doing something legal. Because in any scenario, a regular business gives you more profit than an illegal one because regular business can be scaled to a very high level. Not in Russia though, because in Russia you can get locked practically for any business. Or they can just take it away. Yeah, and in the US and Europe things are not so complicated, and I think with time everyone realizes that it's better to do something legal either way. So how much have you earned in total during your career, let's say from every business? Well, I've never saved money, to be honest. I've never counted. I've never had anything like this, like you. I counted, yeah, it's $1.2 million. If I had to count in dollars, I can't really estimate. But I got that 1.2 million within a long period of time, and I was in jail for 10 years, so if we divide those 10 years, it's 120 months, and we divide 1.2 million on 120 months, it will be $10,000 per month, and I can earn that legally from various businesses. If we divide, then yeah, but money used to come to me in waves. Yeah, and I earned my money quite quickly. I got that 1.2 million, I guess, in 2 years. Yeah, that's the thing. For example, when you're doing something illegal, you get a certain amount, like $70,000 to $80,000 or 100,000. You don't want to work so much the way you worked before you got those money. Accordingly, you take breaks. So if I was working nonstop, what would it be in 7 years? I guess I would have earned numerous thousands of dollars. But since I worked, took breaks, had rests, had fun, I don't know. If you count in dollars, well, for the whole time, maybe it would be $500,000 or 400,000, give or take. So for 8 years, that's $50,000 a year, not so much. Yeah, if you count like that, any person grows with experience. At first I earned pennies, then I switched from money laundering. I started to make different money, then it was PayPal and so on with these gateways and stuff. All this came with experience to me. But going back to those Android Trojans, I want to point out that this does not apply to iPhones, just only Android devices. If back in the day you used text messages to steal money, it got much worse now. For instance, now there is such a thing in programming called injecting. It's when you tap your bank app icon and instead of the real bank app to open, there's a fake window that is injection. You enter the username and password, nothing happens, but the login and password get into the admin panel. Next, we, the hackers, enter this login and password on the website. A text message comes to the phone, but the victim doesn't see it because there's interceptance set up. and hackers enter the code from the message on the website. And that's how they can get access to your account. If earlier injecting didn't exist, money was stolen through text messages, now it's more complicated in that regard. But you still have to infect the victim's phone, right? Yeah, and there's a number of ways to infect the phone, starting from classified ads database. You parse the phone number base, send a text message like I'm interested in exchange with my surcharge. They tap to check what's the offer, and bang, the phone basically gets infected. So that's all social engineering, right? Yeah, I would say that's pure social engineering, same as with PayPal in the sense that it's not easy to get bank accounts. You have to get traffic, either you do it yourself, getting it through Google, but the problem with this method is that it doesn't really last long, because they block it quite fast. Yeah, you bring traffic to your stealer, let's say Australian traffic, and the minimum of 1 to 2 people out of 10 use the same bank because it's very popular. And what if I say, hey Siri, right now? It probably just triggered most of audience's iPhones. I get comments like that a lot. I was at a lecture for bank employees and cops, and I told them there's a system now, like you're walking down the street and you're like, hey Siri, send a text message to such and such a number. Okay, well, my iPhone is in airplane mode right now, but they're like, stop saying that because Siri gets activated in our iPhones and tries to send something somewhere. So basically my question is, if we say, hey Siri, send a text message to this and this number, what's gonna happen? Well, nothing, because there will be a reply message where you have to confirm. But can't Siri read that out loud? I don't think so. I think it shouldn't. Again, this kind of fraud doesn't apply to iPhones. At least we haven't worked with Trojans for iPhones. Well, maybe you should have, as iPhone owners statistically are said to have more money in general. The problem is that you can't download the virus. If on Android you can download an app from an external website, not Play Market, for iPhones the only way is through App Store, and the apps are highly moderated and they have closed source code, so you can't really do anything. So basically that sounds like a really good advice for anyone. It's better to pay 100 or 200 extra dollars and get an iPhone, not to have your money stolen through your phone. What's your favorite book? It's 1984 by George Orwell. Well, I haven't read it yet. Can you imagine that? You should. When I read it first, it became my favorite book right away. It's about totalitarian regime. I love all the stories about the government, security services, and so on. I'm not gonna tell you about it, or it won't be interesting. Anyway, it's about an agent who worked in London. Do you think Russia is moving in that direction? Russia is going to get to that in a long time because the mindset is different. In order for Russia to get closer to Europe, we need to change the way how the society thinks, so there's a different point of view, a new one. I don't know, maybe 30 to 40 years should pass for some changes to happen, and for now the people are not ready for that because people are scared, people are in fear. Nobody needs those rallies. They gather like 2,000 to 3,000 people when there are 150 to 160 million people in Russia. It's 146 actually, and even fewer now. Yeah, give or take, so I think it's not going to happen soon. And do you think drugs and prostitution will ever be legalized in Russia? I seriously doubt that. Again, this is all because of society's mindset. I think in the nearest, 20 years, nothing is going to drastically change in Russia because the government that is in power now, they have too many successors. That means the power is not going to change soon, and the biggest problem with Russia is that all of the media is basically under control. You mean the media is under government's control? Of course, all the control and stakes of main Russian federal TV channels belong to the Kremlin. As one wise man once said, give me a TV and I'll prove that the earth is flat. 60 to 70% of people believe whatever they say on TV. So basically, as long as the government have the media, you can't really do anything. That's why there's such a war for the internet, because it's also media. And if the state has any conflicts with people in nearest future, because someone said something on YouTube, if there's a serious conflict, they're gonna block YouTube. And you know what? It's not gonna be a surprise for anyone. Is the US the best country to live in your opinion? Yeah, as long as you're not doing illegal business, and I'm done with that. Can you recommend a movie for me and for our audience that had a great impact on you, really pulled your heartstrings? That would be 12 Angry Men. And as for movies about hackers, for instance, none of them shows the process even a little close to reality. Well, many say that Mr. Robot is a great show. I haven't seen it. I've seen a lot of movies about hackers and not a single one delivers. I would say that they show like 20 to 30% of how it really is, not more. That's understandable though, because the director is far from being a hacker, or maybe they didn't have enough consulting and they should have invited some real hackers to help. Okay, so there's some news. It's pretty recent. It says that Russia has set a record in the amount of Tor browser users. Why do you think people turn to Tor in Russia? I think I can explain that. If you compare Russia and the US, for instance, or Europe or other countries, the criminal element is more present in Russia. And there are obvious reasons for that. Firstly, because Russia is more corrupt, and secondly, because the government itself are criminals. As they say, if the father steals and the kids see it, they will be thieves as well. That goes from the top, we should all understand that. Like the fish rots from the head. Yeah, exactly. And if I can just go and buy a driving license in Moscow for $1,000 or $1,500, not even visiting the police inspection, well, maybe once to sign and get it, what can we even talk about? Of course, that's why people know that they can buy their way out of anything, and that's why that's very expected. And that's not going to end until Russia is so highly corrupt. Yeah, and what's more interesting, what's the difference of corruption level in different countries? In developed countries, which are not so corrupt, there's also corruption, but you can bribe not every single person, like a traffic police officer, a doctor, or a judge. You can only bribe someone at the highest level, and that's called lobbying, not bribing. Yeah, I completely agree. In our country, you can bribe a representative of any field, and basically everybody knows that in Russia. And don't you think that Tor is popular among, well, okay, I have Tor installed on my computer, but I open it twice a year, maybe. Well, generally using Tor is not so safe. Firstly, because the exit point is still the same and the provider will see that you used it, and many people were caught because of Tor. And what if you use VPN first and then open Tor? Well, that's a different question, but people mostly think that you just download Tor and you're secure, and the provider will still see it. For instance, there was a case, I don't remember the details, a university got attacked by hackers, the database was hacked, and somebody opened the university president's account from Tor. So the security services just found out what the university that was, checked who last used Tor from the campus, and that's it. They just came to his house, and it was obvious that it was him. So I wouldn't say that Tor is a secure system. And don't you think that, okay, let me continue about Tor. So I used it a couple of times personally. When I was making a video about drugs, for example. So when I needed to use a website that I'm not going to mention, and I had to talk with a drug courier for the video, then with a grower, and I checked out all the prices and stuff like that, that's when I needed Tor. And I'm sure that many of my acquaintances and not acquaintances use Tor exclusively to buy drugs. Yeah, exactly. And then don't you think that the government can just make the providers mark every single person who uses Tor? Yeah, I agree with that. That may be possible. I mean, maybe it's paranoia. I don't know. Yeah, but in any case, 70 to 80% of Tor users are just drug users because the rest of the forums, I mean the dark forums, they kind of exist on regular domain names as well. The point is it's easier to access them from the clear net. So Tor is mostly used by drug dealers and those who are doing really bad crimes, for instance, like contract killing or terrorism. Some terrorist organization even has their own website as far as I know, and maybe it was shut down, I don't remember. But the truth about all of this, like generally speaking, all these protections like VPNs, Trinet socks, gateways, and all of that, all this works until you cross the line of what you can do. Even if you're using a triple Tor with 3 VPNs, but you blew up a subway station somewhere in the city, you will be found by other systems either way. You'll still get caught. And all those people who basically created the internet and operating systems and the computer itself, like there's a perception that Russian hackers are the strongest in the world. Well, but they're really strong at breaking systems especially. I know one guy called Drinkman. I think he's the greatest hacker in the world. He's from Syktyvkar. He lived in my house in Minsk, and I saw what they can do. Yeah, I get that, but the question is that we shouldn't judge a programmer's power by their hacking skills. In fact, Americans invented both the internet and the computer itself, and accordingly, they are much more interested in it. The thing is that they don't do legal stuff as much. I mean, is Bill Gates worse than Drinkman? I mean, those guys are famous in the dark world, and these are very famous in everything legal, like creation and destruction. Yeah, and you cannot make conclusions that our hackers are stronger. They can be stronger in fraud, in hacking, yeah. But if you take the power of programming knowledge, the greatest, I think, is still Bill Gates. It's just my opinion. Americans are just afraid to do something like that. They have completely different government and different values as well. The values are different and the standards of living are different, so that's why only Russian names appear often, because we're kind of in conflict with America, and that's understandable that we only see Russian names as hackers. So, okay, you talked about Bill Gates, you can add a few words about Donald Trump, and you'll probably get a visa. Yeah, okay, I'm just kidding. So what was the biggest luck of your life? I guess when we got like 50 grand from one case, I won't tell you from which one. Maybe it was 60 grand. I think it was probably luck. I don't know, in terms of like work or business. Okay, then, how much money do you need to be happy, to make you like absolutely happy so you don't have to do anything? I'll tell you this, when I was young, I thought it was great to make $1,000 a month. When I started earning 1,000, that wasn't enough for me. And because the numbers in mathematics are infinite, just the same as income, it can be infinite. And if you ask any rich man, they would all say that they need a little more money than they have. So every person is wired that way psychologically. There's no limit, so therefore mathematics and numbers are endless. I cannot answer this question because I can't guarantee that tomorrow having 100 billions, I'm not going to want to have 200 because somebody got a cool yacht, you know? Subconsciously you will want that even though everything is cool in your life. So you don't tie money to happiness. Yeah, because I know that if I will have $100 million and I will buy a yacht for 20, a house for 30, and I will have 70 left, and that's already not enough, and you have to make more, right? And it works for any person. Like if you get to $100,000, you get to this amount, it won't be enough. This is my experience and my opinion. I remember once I dreamed of earning $100 a day, then 200 and 500. As they say, no matter how much you feed the wolf, he still uses the dark net. And what's happiness for you then? Happiness is financial stability because everything is connected to this. For every person, no matter how much they lie to themselves, if there is no money, you will not have a girlfriend, no acquaintances, no friends. You will have them, but they will be poor. There are people who lie that happiness doesn't depend on money. It's clear that those papers themselves are not happiness, but happiness is in opportunities, what you can do with it. It's connected with society in every way. If you have no finances, then you are nobody for society. And secondly, it's health. The third one would be to get married because I'm from 25 to 35. I cannot say the exact age, and I'm thinking of getting married. And if I get married, I'm 100% going to burn my laptop and I'm not going to touch it at all because I would have more responsibilities, not just myself, if I get married. And if I have children, then it's even more crucial. I believe that everyone should do this. If you get married, then you should understand the risks. And it's terrible if you're in jail and your wife is trying to fix something for you. Yeah, you're not only responsible for yourself, but for others too. Yeah, and people have to understand that. It's only in the movies that it looks really cool when you get beaten and handcuffed to a radiator and you forget about everything, about those cool parties, about these drugs, the chicks, and so on. It's all temporary. And how do people usually get involved in crime, consciously or accidentally? Personally, I haven't seen anyone do that consciously, but that depends on life situation. I mean, if you have $1 million, you're not going to rob PayPal, right? There are so many scammers in Russia because people don't have money, and that's basically the main reason. So they do that out of need. Yeah, the need pushes them to start. I have not seen a single person like having money, legal business, working in a bank as a top manager who would turn to PayPal fraud or pull money from the ATM, that's non-existent, only life circumstances. Just like in my case, I was young, I needed money, and I didn't have too much brain. Well, I would say your brain is fine, actually. Well, I mean, when I was young, it is now that I gain experience, I understand what's what. You begin to appreciate what you have. You begin to understand your parents. It's a very tricky subject when you get caught, especially when your parents start to worry about you. If you had a chance to rewind your life for 10 years, what would you change? Well, I would have quit in time because 2 to 3 years ago, I had a lot of money, even by today's standards. I spent it incorrectly though on clubs, girls, and so on. I should have worked more carefully. It may seem wild to someone, but in our company, it was okay to spend $15,000 to $20,000 per night. Where those money disappeared is still a mystery for me. Like starting from cocaine parties and clubs, and in the country where I live, there are some luxury clubs where tables are very expensive and a lot of money was spent during the night. For example, I wouldn't spend it this way now, but I guess that's what youth is for. If it wasn't for this, maybe I would have done something else. I don't know. But what I regret is how I spent the money the wrong way. There are people who can't resist as well. When you earn money that easily, in fact, they don't really come that easily. There are worries, nerves, sleepless nights in front of your laptop. You feel that in terms of psychological health. And when the money comes, it seems so easy and you spend it accordingly. You haven't worked at a factory for a year, you haven't saved up $10,000. I think I made my point. Easy come, easy go. It's crucial to not only have courage, but, to have life experience in order not to spend this money the way I did. Can you address the audience out there watching and give them maybe a couple of parting words? What do you want to say to them? I probably want to talk to those who are already doing this business, any kind of illegal business. So the first advice would be not to think that you are as safe as your computer tells you that you are. All those VPNs and other protection, it's all bullshit. I mean, watch closely what you're doing. If you're stealing by small amounts, then this is one thing. But as soon as there's an opportunity to steal a couple of $1 million, it's better not to do it because the tails will come for you anyway. If you're involved in some kind of shadowy activity, you're trying to save up money and quit in time until you get caught, everyone will get caught. Out of 10 cases, at best one can retire with huge bags of money earned with this illegal business, but you won't last for a long time anyway. Even if your system is perfectly tuned, but the human factor will manifest itself one way or another. You might say something somewhere, your girlfriend accidentally spills the beans. That is, the human factor cannot be ignored. Be careful and quit on time. If you have at least $1 million, quit. You can come up with many different legal things with that money. $1 million? Even rubles or any other currency. The point is that, you shouldn't wait that you're gonna get $1 million and then quit. No, actually, that's not how it works. Because the situation may have an unexpected plot twist. And there's nothing more precious than your freedom. I learned that the hard way. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.